Hello and welcome back to my channel, and today I will be showing you how I made this sun goddess with a head that I had already pasteled before, which was my first attempt using pastels before I started on a face as a tester, but thought I'd turn it into a sun goddess. As you can see, I was using the head of a Freaky Fusion Frankie and the body of the chick Frankie. The first thing I did was I cut up a plastic bag which I was going to use as the template for my wefts, which was my first attempt making, so I think it went okay. I cut up all the hair that I was going to use into small pieces and sectioned them out on the plastic. I then got some PVA glue and placed it on top of the plastic and glued the hair down, making sure to go over the hair so that they were able to fully form and stick together. This took a long time, trying to thin out all the pieces but making sure they were thick enough to work as individual wefts. For the next part, I had to make sure that I could actually put the wefts on the doll. So after putting some cling film around the head, I got a small bit of yellow fabric, using the yellow because it fit with the colour of the actual hair, and placed it on top of the doll, using a hair bubble to wrap around to keep it secure. The last doll I did had a lot of fabric sticking out and poking, so what I did with this one is I cut out a little area where the fabric stuck up and I sewed it together so that it looked more rounded and neat at the ends, so that when I was able to put the wig onto the doll it wouldn't stick out as much. The stitch I used for this was a blanket stitch, one that I have recently discovered and have fallen in love with, so I'm very much using this stitch for everything really. And then I got some PVA glue and started to rub it all over the fabric. This is so that when I take the fabric off, it stays a nice solid shape and it holds up firm, which will work as a brilliant base for putting the wefts on. Once I had finished this, the hair had completely dried, so I decided to try and curl it as I wanted to have a nice soft beach wave look on this doll. As you can see, I started trying to place the pointy tool I have onto a hair curler and then hold it in place so that the hair would heat up, as it didn't really work having the curlers directly on top of it. However, I actually discovered this technique didn't work as well as if I just got my hairdryer out and blew the pointy thing with my hairdryer. This is because not only did it heat up more intensely, but it also cooled down a lot faster, which made it easy to hold it in place with my hands without getting any damage and keeping the curls in place without unraveling faster. Watching the time-lapse of the curls unravel is actually really satisfying, and something you couldn't really see until you sped up the recording of this video. Another thing I started doing whilst I was doing this was getting each of the little wefts and rolling them between my fingers curls to create almost kind of like dreadlock, but this is mainly so that when I wrapped them around the tool, they held their place more firmly without getting stuck between the other hairs from other parts of the weft. Up having to do this 3 or 4 times because of the fact that it didn't completely cover the entire head of the doll, as well as the fact that because they were so thin with the curls, you could see the actual weft line. So I had to do this, I think, 3 or 4 times, making the different lines over and over and over again. So this took quite a lot of time, but I think the end result was definitely worth it. By the way, just a quick heads up, I apologise for the audio quality. I know it's not the best, I don't have a microphone and I'm recording it solely through my phone, so it may not be the best, but at least I'm able to get some audio out. So at the end of the day, I think as long as this works, if it keeps up working, then maybe I might get a mic, but if it's not such an encouraging doing, then I don't want to spend a lot of money for something I don't use, though I'm pretty sure I would do, so I might get one in the future, but for now I apologise for the audio quality. You love me and hate me, true me and false me, make me your shining star. Giving, receiving, changing, believing. In a few seconds you'll actually see the hair move drastically, and that's because I used hairspray to hold everything in place so the curls didn't undone, as well as making sure that it stayed secure. After that, I did make sure to pull all of them apart so they weren't all knotted together, and to make it easier to keep in place. I then started to cut out all of the different wefts, making sure that I had just enough onto each of them so that they could stick down without being too visible. I started doing this for quite a few of these until I realised that I could just peel them off the plastic and they would be completely fine. However, as I just started doing this, it still worked how it's supposed to. I'm putting another layer of glue on there just so that it's more secure, but I kept making the wefts, managed to pull them off after, so I think for future reference, if you want to follow this technique for making wefts, make sure you have quite a lot of glue down, so that when you do pull them off, they don't separate or fall apart. I'll actually link a video I used as a reference in the description. I started putting glue onto the other sides of the plastic as I thought the shine of it wouldn't stick to the wig cap as well. However, I suddenly realised that I could just peel them off, and you can see me doing it there, so I didn't have to do this in the end. Before I could put the wefts on the wig cap, I knew I had to make sure that the cap was in the right shape, so here I am just trimming around the edges, making sure that it follows a nice pattern and size. I cut around the ears and made sure to cut out any excess fabric inside so that the wig was able to sit down nice and tightly onto the head without any excess fabric being prevalent or visible. And finally, one more layer of glue to keep it in place. Finally, I could start sticking them to the top of the wig cap. I made sure to go in a line going up so that each weft was hidden well as making sure that they looked thick enough to be perceived as hair, whilst also not being too thick that it was too extreme. Whilst I found the wefts were easier when it came to having the strips going on in one go, I did however find that it was easier putting their hair directly onto the head of the cap, as it meant that when I was doing the roots it didn't look like it was fully sticking out and it blended in a bit more. I added some lines which I wanted to follow when putting on the wig onto the top part of the head, however I ended up not following this as they didn't seem to work as well. I also found that some of the wefts were too long for the curves, so I ended up cutting them shorter so that they didn't stick out as intensely. This is the point where I started to have difficulty, as it was pretty hard to hide the tops of the wefts under the hair as they were curled in such a certain way that you could see the hair underneath. So I think the previous technique I used in my previous video worked better for the roots. This is where I started to do the method of having the wefts facing one way and folding the hair over top of it. This would work, however I did find it was quite challenging to have the wefts and the hair in a way that didn't hide the top of the wig, as it was quite a challenge to do, so I ended up having to find a different method. As this wasn't working, I decided to use glue on my finger to press the hair into the right way for the parting. However, it still wasn't looking how I wanted it, so I tried to cross the hair over how you would with a reroot. However, it just didn't have the same impact, as the little bits of curls were too far apart for it to look like a natural parting. Whilst this didn't work exactly how I wanted to, I do need to take into consideration that I am still a beginner, and this is for people who are beginners, and as a beginner I will make mistakes, so I think it's best to show the parts where I do mess up so that people know that it is okay to not be perfect at everything straight away. I'm sure with this learning experience I will be able to go on to do better in the future, but sometimes you need to have a few extra steps to get there. I wrapped the hair in hair bubbles and elastic bands and then sprayed it in place with some hairspray and left it overnight. This was so that I could decrease the volume that the doll had. I did find that the top bubble did leave a mark on the hair and it was also very stiff, so I pulled it apart slightly so it looked a little more natural whilst also having an effect that wasn't too volumized. I did however think this would come in handy for what I wanted to do, as I wanted to make sure I had a chain going around the back of the head, and it worked as a simple template. Then I went on to the face up. One thing you'll find is there was already pastels on the face. This was because when I did my first face up, I wanted to make sure that the sealant, Mr. Super Clear, did seal correctly, so I used it on this doll before I did it on the doll I was working on. So I used that as a base, but I wanted to go over it so all the areas that still looked green and had green tones had a more yellow effect so that there wasn't a clash in colour scheme. I started with a brush, however I did find that having it using my finger worked a lot more efficiently, going over a larger surface area and having more pigmentation. However, I wasn't able to get into the small little areas, so I had to use a brush for there. Once I had the basic colour down, I started using some blush with some dark reds as well as contouring the face. This was mainly around the forehead, the cheekbones, the jawline and the eyes. I also made sure to give the ears a little bit of love. Okay, there was a massive change in colour of the face. My phone had died as I was darkening the tone of the face, which was done so that it could blend more with the body, which I had customised apart from this, which you will see in my part 2 of this video. Then I added some white chalk pastels to the face so that I could lighten up the highlights so that it blended a lot more. And then I went over the eyes more and more as it felt like it had a too grey tone under the eyes and I wanted it to look a little more vibrant. So I just went over with different coloured pastels trying to find the right tone to decrease the grey. It took quite a while, but I finally managed to get it right. Something tells me this is what happens after you don't check that a brush hasn't been used on darker colours before you do a face-up, so that's definitely something I need to keep in mind for the future. I actually found these really cute little sun charms in a fabric shop I went to and thought they were perfect for this design and for the headpiece, so I went over them with a golden nail varnish I found. I know it's not the best thing to use, however I had nothing else that worked. I then used a varnish sealant, which hopefully would work to keep the nail varnish in place and keep it nice and secure. I then used the lid of the bottle so that I could spread the varnish out to make sure it covered all the little areas and sprinkled a little bit of golden glitter on top. I then went on to the face-up where I did an outline of the eye using a red pencil so that I could have the basic shape. Anytime I found that it wasn't symmetrical, I tried to use a mouldable eraser so that I could get it into the right place. I did find this pencil rubber didn't work as well as I hoped, however it still kind of did the job. I gave a basic outline for a pupil, but I didn't want it too intense as I wanted to keep the irises clear so they glue and almost looked like they had no eyes. And then I went over in a little bit of colour so that they would have a little bit of the look of people, but not too much. I didn't have a paintbrush that was small enough that I felt comfortable using, which is why I used a needle for this step, though I don't recommend it. I wanted the eyes to have more of a glowing golden effect where you couldn't see the focus or detail in the eye, just a pure glow. However, I found that this was very hard to do. You can actually see here I am trying to get that outline right, but it just wouldn't work. I think next time I do this I will definitely look up some more tutorials beforehand to find out some better techniques to getting these done. This was whilst using a reference photo and I still wasn't able to get it right, so I will definitely be looking up some more techniques in the future. Once I had the basic outline colour, I tried to go over it with a little bit of a darker orange under the eye just to give the effect of a waterline. Yet again, this didn't work in my favour and it seemed quite blotchy. However, I think if I go over again in the future looking up some other techniques, this might work a little better. Yet again, this is just a practice and just a beginner, so any mistakes I make, at least hopefully people can learn from them. Also, if anyone who does this professionally has any tips or advice, I would highly appreciate it. I tried to salvage the glowing eye idea with a bit of white paint folding into the centre, however it didn't work how I wanted it to. I also managed to get a little bit of white paint on the eyebrow bone, which I couldn't take off or salvage, so I thought I might try and adapt that into the design later on. I also tried to add a little bit of darker paint in the centre and blend it a bit more, but just everything wasn't working. As I realised this just wasn't working, I decided to do what I knew with adding pupils and a rim to an iris. It didn't work how I wanted it to, and it did mean I had to change the blended design. However, I knew that it would work, so hopefully I was able to get that done. I added a contrasting dark colour at the top and a lighter colour at the bottom to give a more dynamic contrast between the two, and added a little bit of a light. I then started adding a little bit more shadows, as if it was eyeshadow above and below the eye, making sure to have a little bit of blending with some lighter colours and darker colours. I tried the darker colours first, but decided to go over it with the lighter colours and then blend it up so that I was able to have more of an intensity. I personally think it would have been better if I left it without having the light colours first, as the red did overpower the irises I'd made and made them look pure red, so I had to go over them again. However, I think the overall outcome was at least somewhat decent. I actually started using a small paintbrush that I had found and was hoping that I would be able to get into the smaller crevices with it a bit better than the paintbrush I was using before. It worked a lot better for my favour and it was more compact, however I still wasn't able to get the pigment I wanted. This is where you can see the red powder I used was sticking to the paint and completely dulled out some of the colours. I ended up feeling like the dark colours I added completely took away from the golden light goddess sort of aesthetic and made it look a bit more dark and eerie, which was a little upsetting. However, I think overall it worked okay. And then I added some more of the lighter colours to the outline just so that I could have a bit of the salvation of the light colour, and I added a little bit more of an iris outline on the left eye you see, as I felt it was slightly out of place to the other eye. I tried to go over the under eye again, making sure to add a good enough contrast to the top of the whole eye area, whilst also trying to make sure that it was thin enough. Yet again, I found it was really hard to do, but I tried my best. I then tried adding some eyelashes, which ended up being an absolute botched disaster, and I was so gutted because until this point I thought it was going okay. I think it probably would have been best to not include under eyelashes. Using this really long paintbrush for the upper eyelashes, and I was not confident at at all using this. It was a first go, I think. However, I found that the thin lines made it a lot easier to reach all the small places and get the thinner lines that I wanted. The only issue I found was that it was harder to control where the lines went, so if there was any lumpy areas, it would go straight over, and it was basically game over from there. However, I was able to get the desired effect I wanted a lot easier. I wish I didn't outline the bottom with the same colour. I can't forget the day we met. Your eyes so blue. I then added some eyelashes, which I had always struggled with, but I found that doing it with this was absolutely stunning, and I just absolutely loved the way it looks, until I got to that one lash you see on the left, which went way too far up, and I was terrified as I had no clue how to fix it. I squished the face so that I was able to get into the crevices with the lips, and I found this actually helped the best when doing the lips, and the lips was definitely the saving grace of this doll. I actually found that I did it a little too pink, however I thought that with the overall design it gave a little bit more of a interesting contrast of the colours whilst also blending into the design very well. Overall I think that the lips was definitely the saving grace of this doll. I added some chalk pastels to the lips, as well as adding some pencil, some white, brown, pinks, some reds. I tried to make sure that I added enough tones, and then went over again with pastels. This was to add a bit of dimension and texture to the lips, and I just thought that overall it helped give the dimension and effect that a lip would have. I was really concerned with how I would hide the hole in the middle of the mouth, as this is a Freaky Fusion Frankie doll, which has a little like mouth fan thing that kind of looks like a dummy that goes in the mouth. But I managed to find that when I had the different pastels and pencils going over it, it covered it very well. I then put some PVA glue and some fabric glue into the wig cap so that I could put it onto the head. I had hooked some chain together with a little bit of wire, and then I grabbed another wire to hook it onto the head. I wanted to do this into the wig cap, however the wire wasn't strong enough to go into the head or wig cap, so I ended up just using a little bit of PVA glue and hooking it into the hair underneath the wig cap. Luckily this wasn't too much of a problem, as if it didn't hold its place, I was able to have the little sun placed on top with some glue gun glue, so that even if it didn't hold its place, I was able to have the glue secure it there. I then cut up some lashes and stuck them onto the eyes. It took a lot of work and I had to do it off camera, as I had to do some gymnastics with the doll's head to find a way to have the right angle to hold it in place. However, I was in the end able to secure it in place. After that, I was finally able to finish having the doll, and this is the head for the sun goddess. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you watch part 2 soon. Thank you so much for watching.